In our lives, we often find ourselves weighed down by the expectations, judgments, and perceptions of others. We feel an invisible force pushing us to prove ourselves, to defend our worth, and to hide parts of who we are. But what if we could live with a different set of principles? Principles that free us from these constraints and allow us to walk our path in peace and confidence. Imagine living with nothing to prove, nothing to hide, and nothing to defend. This is the essence of true freedom. In this space, we find a life that is authentic, grounded, and resilient. A life where we can breathe deeply, knowing that our value is intrinsic, unshakable, and not up for negotiation. Nothing to prove. When we live with nothing to prove, we begin to release the constant drive to validate our worth through achievements, titles, or accolades. Our culture often emphasizes the importance of making it, achieving milestones, and earning recognition. While there's beauty in striving for personal growth and betterment, it becomes a burden when we tie our self-worth to these things. We can end up living under the shadow of comparison, always wondering if we measure up, always questioning if we are enough. Living with nothing to prove doesn't mean giving up on goals or aspirations. Instead, it's a shift in our motivation. Rather than striving to impress others, we pursue what genuinely fulfills us. Rather than using success to define ourselves, we let our journey speak for itself, and we trust that we are already complete as we are. True freedom comes when we find joy in our pursuits without needing others to validate our worth. The words of the Apostle Paul remind us, "For am I now seeking the approval of man, or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." Galatians 1 verse 10. When we let go of the need to prove ourselves to others, we become free to live in alignment with our higher calling. Nothing to hide. Living with nothing to hide is about embracing radical honesty, both with ourselves and others. There's a profound relief in no longer concealing our struggles, doubts, or imperfections. Often, we wear masks to present a version of ourselves that seems more acceptable or desirable. We hide our vulnerabilities, thinking they make us weak. We hide our mistakes, believing they make us unworthy. But every time we hide a part of who we are, we reinforce the belief that something about us is not good enough. When we live with nothing to hide, we allow ourselves to show up as our whole selves, with our strengths and our flaws, our successes and our failures. We accept that imperfection is part of the human experience. Living authentically means we are no longer performing, we are simply being. In this authenticity, we foster genuine connections with others. We give them permission to be vulnerable too. And we become free from the exhausting cycle of constantly managing how we are perceived. As Psalm 139 verse 14 reminds us, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Accepting this truth allows us to drop the facade and embrace our true nature. Nothing to defend. Often, we feel compelled to protect our opinions, choices, and beliefs with fierce defensiveness. We may feel that others must understand us, agree with us, or see our perspective as valid. But defending ourselves becomes a heavy weight to carry. It creates walls between us and others. Living with nothing to defend doesn't mean we avoid sharing our perspective. It simply means we no longer need everyone to agree or approve. When we live with nothing to defend, we become secure in our truth. We learn to listen with an open mind, understanding that others' opinions don't diminish our own. We embrace the idea that our worth doesn't hinge on others' understanding or approval. This freedom allows us to live with peace. We can express ourselves fully, yet remain unshaken by disagreement. We become like the tree planted by streams of water, as described in Psalm 1 verse 3, flourishing independently of external opinions or validation. Together, these principles, nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to defend, create a life of true freedom. A life where we are free from the need for external validation, free from the burden of perfection, and free from the compulsion to be understood by everyone. Living this way is not always easy. It requires courage and self-acceptance. But when we choose to embody these principles, we begin to experience a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment. Imagine walking into any situation with confidence, knowing you are enough. You are not there to impress, to conceal, or to argue. You are simply there to be, to connect, to grow. This is the freedom of living with nothing to prove, nothing to hide, and nothing to defend. It's a way of life that is rooted in self-respect and grace. It's a way of life that invites us to focus on what truly matters and let go of what doesn't. This journey calls us to trust in our intrinsic worth, a worth that is not given by the world and, therefore, cannot be taken away by it. By living with these principles, we open ourselves up to greater possibilities. We are free to embrace our potential without the fear of failure. We are free to connect with others deeply without the need to curate a perfect image. We are free to stand firm in our beliefs without the fear of rejection. Ultimately, these principles encourage us to seek validation not from external sources, but from a deep connection with our Creator. We find that we are wonderfully made, unique, and worthy, not because of what we do or what others think, but simply because we are. This shift brings a sense of calm and resilience into our lives. We become less reactive, more understanding, and more focused on what truly aligns with our purpose. Living with nothing to prove, nothing to hide, and nothing to defend is a choice to live authentically. It's a choice to embrace the life we are given, to show up fully, and to let go of the distractions that pull us away from our truth. It is an act of faith and courage. And in making this choice, we find that true freedom is not about changing who we are, but rather about embracing who we have always been. We are here to live fully, to connect meaningfully, and to walk our unique path without apology.